And let me post the link. Let me give you a link. So this will be recorded for you. For you, you can always come back and review and learn from this debate if you want. Here's the link. Let me just make sure the audio is okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess the audio is fine. All right. So, okay. My proposition, as the room suggests, is that no one understands science. So, let's start with you. Let's prove it. If you can prove to me that you understand science, then I'm already wrong. So why don't you tell me? Yeah, it's that simple, actually.
I
But
think it's about the conception,
hmm
you see, that you
hmm
have. What
hmm
science is, I think it's important to know that at
hmm
the basis of how
hmm
you act, you come to a level of some kind of axiomatic belief, I think is the right word. And scientists believe, let's say, that by
hmm
truthful dialogue, you can strive towards a transcendent truth. You see,
hmm
that's at the core of the scientific enterprise, which I think
hmm
is something that comes from Christianity specifically.
hmm
Because you can make a
Interesting.
case that those people are acting out Christ without knowing, but rationality in itself doesn't produce rationality. It's the foundation of the scientific enterprise is a belief that you can strive towards a higher transcendent truth by
hmm
truthful dialogue. That's to summarize it. And
hmm
why would you believe that? You see,
hmm
uh, so and you see, there's a set of beliefs, and then usually,
hmm
well, why would you do science? Because you believe that speaking the truth will make it,
hmm
reality better, if you so will.
hmm hmm
There's a co-creating effect, maybe even. So you can make an
hmm
interesting case. You can use that you have to use religious language to describe what science is. And well,
hmm
I'm kind of a Jungian a little bit in my thinking, but
hmm
Jungians would say that science is embedded in a dreamlike structure that surrounds it. And the religious enterprise is part of the dreamlike structure. So it's informed by
hmm
things around it. And before you have a conscious thought, it's informed by all sorts of unconscious processes. So, and it's
hmm
not rational of how people act. People are deeply irrational, and have all sorts of beliefs. So
hmm
rationality in itself is not how science works, I would
hmm
say. But okay, I think I have circled around my answer, I guess.
hmm Actually, what you have to say is kind of interesting. Usually, people admire science as especially leftists, they admire science as something of cosmic truth, some edifice, the way I express it is it has to do with the very fibers of the fabric of reality. It's some
It
absolute
has become
truth.
their religion, yeah.
Yes, 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 very much. Yes. So at least you realize that science is a religion. It's very similar to religion, certainly. Popper actually.
But I do believe that
Mhm.
yeah, I
Popper
do
act.
believe that its core belief
Mhm.
is true. Let's say I do believe that truthful speech, well, I do
Mhm.
believe it has to be in service of love. Let's say that
Mhm.
will create the best possible habitable reality around you and within you. If you follow that, the
Mhm.
truth will set you free. I do believe that. But well,
Mhm.
I'm a Christian. Maybe you have guessed it, but
Mhm.
you see, but I do believe that aspect of science is true in a sense.
Mhm. I don't know. I mean, depends on the definition of truth.
Well, you could. There's a definition of truth with it. It's a Darwinistic definition. If
Mhm.
something leads to life, it is true, and if it leads to death, then it was maybe wrong.
Mhm.
And if you speak, let's say, if you don't speak the truth, let's say, then you could make an argument that you pathologize the inner processes that try to orient you towards life. And nowadays, there's not much of a grave consequence, but back then, maybe 5,000 years ago, like everything tries to kill you. And if you pathologize the inner mechanisms that try to orient you towards life, then good luck, And it may
Wait,
be even still true today, you see.
you said good luck?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, in a sense, you can try to figure out if you do the opposite, maybe not speaking truth, and then you will pathologize your inner compass, so to speak. And that's a deadly thing ultimately, because then you make decisions based on a faulty inner map of reality. Like you think you go north, but you go southwest or so. Like
good. So again, I agree with you that. So you said very well. You said truth is it's related to it's a Darwinistic term, which I like very much. I agree with that. And you're saying truth is practical, truth is life, which I also agree. Again, the atheists and not even the atheists, a lot of people, they think truth again is some cosmic, there is a cosmic truth that has to do with the fiber of the fabric of reality, and that is truth. But you're saying no, truth is just something practical that leads to living.
there are different aspects of how you could view truth, but I think in terms of our discussion, that aspect was the one that is most striking. Like certainly there is truth out there, but let's say your mechanisms of finding out towards the higher truth, they are flawed. And the question is, what is the process that brings about the truth? And I see a danger in losing yourself in these. Like, there are these philosophical theoretic concepts of truth, like from the 19th and early 20th century philosophers, and like it's a sterile definition of truth, which goes in circles and leads nowhere. So I like to keep it practical. Yeah. So if your idea leads to people dying, maybe then it's wrong, let's say. And yeah, I tend to lose myself. Sorry, I'm not good at making a concise argument. I circumambulate things.
No,
but
you don't.
You can stop me, you see.
No, it's good. You don't have to be concise
Okay.
as long as you're clarifying and expressing. But you did say that you feel that there is truth out there. What does that mean? So how do you know that? What's your evidence that there is truth out there?
I'm not sure if truth is the right word, but truth out there, you could say the cosmos has a structure, and it is.
How do you know?
It is.
How do you
By
know?
observing it through.
But that's not out.
Use the scientific process to measure how planets, orbit the sun. And
so let me push back. So you're saying it's out there, but now you're saying that it's scientific. So scientific is what you do. That's in there. That's your subjective experience.
No, that's two different things. Like you have an absolute reality that you can only.
Okay, so we disagree.
Slowly get towards it. You have this Platonic idea of.
How do you know?
There's an absolute reality.
How do you know?
And you look at the shadow.
How do you know? How do you know there is an absolute reality? So you're saying there's objective truth out there. How do you know? Objective means you don't know. I mean, that's the definition of objective. It means that which is outside of your knowledge, right? What you know is your subjective truth, and outside of that is objective truth. Objective truth, by definition,
I don't know about
is unknowable. So how do you claim to know?
I don't know about
the unknowable. Go ahead.
I don't know about the definition you mentioned, but
So what's your definition
from science is?
So what's your definition of
what objective is?
Yeah, objective. What's your definition of objective and subjective?
Like objective would be a view of viewing things that is devoid of your subjective view.
Then how do you know it's there? But look, I don't understand how you would know, right? What I know is what I subjectively experience. If I don't subjectively experience something, how do I know? So
Yeah,
objective.
that goes into philosophy.
Yeah.
So you, for example,
Let me just
yes,
welcome.
it's also in the
Let me
realm of
just.
it's
Let,
also in the
let me just
realm of
welcome.
ideas. Yeah.
Let me just welcome Void/Taz.
Hello?
So yeah, you can interject if you have something important to say,
What are
but
we talking about?
just what the room says. No one understands science. Do you feel you understand
No.
science?
No?
Oh, you feel so you agree with my proposition that no one understands science?
I'm pretty sure that there's some people who do, but I don't.
Oh, okay, but so you're not so you have no position on my proposition. No, actually you
No.
if you if
Uh,
you what's your evidence that there are some people who know science? What's your evidence for that?
Scientists?
What do you mean? What's your evidence? That's a word in English. But what's your evidence that yeah, what's your evidence that
So,
scientists exist? What's your evidence?
what do you mean, what's my evidence?
Show me evidence. What's your evidence that
Dude, I
scientists
don't even want to talk about this.
okay.
Like, what is
Well,
this topic? I never,
what's your
like,
question?
what is this? Do you believe in God?
That's not the proposition.
I know, but do you?
That's an ad hominem. That's like irrelevant. I don't know why you
Cool,
bring it
but
up.
do you believe in God?
That's irrelevant. I don't
I'm
see
just,
how that's
I'm just, I'm just asking, bro.
I
I'm just
don't
asking.
have a position. I don't have a position about God. God isn't happens to be, in my opinion, an unscientific theory. So I don't have a position on it. It's undefined.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's all you wanted
Yeah,
to.
are you talking to Dominic about this?
Yes, we're discussing
All right.
exact.
Go ahead. I'm listening.
That's great. All right, Dominic. So we're discussing, and also
Hi.
welcome everybody else. So Dominic, what's it? So as I said, objective by definition, something objective. If you claim something objectively is true, by definition, objective means right. Subjective.
It's
Let me just repeat for everybody. So subjective means it's in my knowledge, right? I am subject in my subjective experience. There is a universe,
I
but I don't know if there is a universe objectively. It's actually unknowable by definition because objective means outside of my knowledge. So by
I'm not sure
definition,
if the definition is right. I've never heard of that
no.
definition.
So what's your definition of objective?
Objective is that which is devoid, let's say, of subjective things.
Well, again, that's
Like,
exactly what I said. I am subjectively aware of the universe, right? It's my subjective experience.
sure, but let's
Objective.
say
Mhm,
you,
mhm,
if you engage in science, you certainly get the idea you have laws of nature,
mhm.
and those tell you something about how the cosmos works, and it's not
But
the absolute
that's my subjective.
reality, but
But that's hold on. That's my
but you
subjective.
can
But one second, let me just say. So that's my subjective experience that there are laws. I noticed that there are laws of nature. That's what I noticed. That what I noticed is my subjective experience, my subjective experiments, my subjective science.
sure.
Mhm.
And of course, nobody says that we will ever know absolute reality,
No,
but
it's unknowable.
certainly
No, it's not ever
the
known.
scientific,
It's unknowable.
the,
Objective knowledge by definition is unknowable. It's useless to even say anything about objective truth. It's by definition unknowable. It will never be known because it is defined to be unknowable. It's just a definition. Do you understand?
to look it up.
What? Are you there?
I'm there.
Yeah. So objective knowledge, objective truth, by definition, is unknown. Is unknowable. It's
But
not
by which
unknown.
definition exactly? So if we
What?
really look into the
Mhm,
definition,
mhm.
so you have the Cambridge Dictionary. So it's something Is it here?
Blind Justice, if you have something to say, I'm interested in hearing it. We're discussing the proposition that no one understands science. That is my proposition.
I think you make it on this one word, like you cannot construct that argument such. Like it's just how you define the term, you know, you would have to make a
look it up.
bigger case, I think.
Yes, look it up in the dictionary, or you can come up with your definition. I don't mind.
I think you have to get at the underlying idea that you have, and the idea what you, I think, want to convey is that we cannot know absolute reality.
It's unknowable by
I'm okay
definition.
with.
No, when you say we cannot, that sounds like a technical barrier. No, it's unknowable by definition. It's different
It
than
could be the case, but you still see the shadow of that absolute reality.
No,
and the shadow is there and real.
Okay, I mean,
like if you use Plato's cave,
you can
thing.
Yeah, you can define objective truth. You can say, yes, indeed, it is unknowable. Actual objective truth is unknowable, but you can say that subjective truth is like the shadow in the cave. It's a slice of, it's a partial dimensional view of the truth. There is an objective truth, and my subjective truth is some aspect of that truth. But
and we have different definitions of truth. You see, if we talk about math, for example, that's objective. It's not subjective. If you do calculus, that's objective truth in there.
What do you mean calculus? What do you mean calculus? Like mathematics?
Yeah. For example,
no. So no, mathematics and logic are sciences. There is no knowledge. We have no knowledge of anything except for science. We have no knowledge except for science. And science is subjective. And every knowledge we have is subjective. I don't see the point of talking about objective truth. I don't see the point. I think it obfuscates.
I would still see it as a useful classification. So what usually what people say when they talk about objective is let's say a something in their worldview that is devoid of a subjective view. So something like every common day use of objective, I think, differs quite a lot from your definition. And
look,
usually you would say subjective is your experience, and objective is something, let's say, like a law of physics. It's something that is objectively there. It's not just subjectively filtered.
No. Science is subjective. Science is subjective. In my experience, in my experimentation, gravity exists. In my experimentation, 1 + 1 is 2. In my experimentations, the sky is blue. This is just experimentation. This is just science.
But if you act on that experimentation, let's say it proves out to be true or not. Let's say all the laws of physics are put into service by products you use.
Yes, but that's in my experience, the laws of nature are true. Physics is true. In my experience, whatever that means, in my experience, yes, I agree that, the laws of nature as per Einstein and so on, yes, they seem to hold very well, yes. I mean, we have problems with them, with dark energy and and whatever. We have some problems, but for more or less, in my experience, science or scientifically, or which is just scientific, just my experience. In my experience, there are laws of nature. I always drop things and they fall. That's in close range. In distance, right now, on the other side of the universe, there is a person maybe sitting at his desk, and he's being repelled by me at the speed of light, or even faster than the speed of light. We know there is dark energy, so probably that's gravity. So gravity, anyway, it's consistent. We know there are laws. Some of them we understand, some of them we don't understand, more or less. Certainly, I agree that there seem to be laws. There seems to be a law that every time I drop something, it falls. There seems to be a law that magnets are always attracted to my fridge. I just noticed it, yeah. It's my experience. I don't have any opinion about objective truth. By definition, I cannot have any knowledge of objective truth. I don't see the point of talking about objective truth.
What is your motivation for having this discussion? Like, what is it you want to figure out?
Actually, my motivation was about the actual scientific method. So you mentioned that there is truth out there. I wanted to just let you know that I don't, that's unknowable. The truth out of my mind, that whatever there is or isn't is completely unknowable by definition. So I have nothing to talk about out there. That's for me spiritual. That's talking about, the spirit. The world of magic, which I have nothing to say about. That's completely unscientific. I don't care about that. Science is about my experimentation with the universe, my experience. I don't even want to say in the universe. It's just my experience. Science is just my experience. Whether there is a universe or not, that's my experience, is that there is a universe. That's just my experience. But really what I want to talk about. Excuse me? What?
Oh, but based on the shadow of the wall, it is not far that you can dream what is outside. When you have a guess, you see it's still a shadow you see on a wall. That doesn't mean that outside doesn't exist.
But even if I guess what is outside of my knowledge, that's still my guess. That's still me. That's still my subjective imagination.
There's an uncertainty, let's say.
Yes, but that's experimentation. There is uncertainty about my very existence. That's good. That's because it is subjective. So there's always uncertainties. I'm flooded with uncertainties. Sure, I don't know if what I remember from a second ago I really remember, or I'm just a Boltzmann brain that I was just created this instant just by randomness. I don't know. Maybe I'm a Boltzmann brain. Maybe I just popped into existence a microsecond ago with all this imagination, and maybe the universe popped into existence a second ago, and my memory of the history of the universe is just built in by sheer coincidence. I don't know. There's many unknowns. There's many uncertainties. That's for sure. Yeah, that's fine. But really, this is just preliminary. What I want to talk about is the scientific method. So what do you think? What do you think is the scientific method? The one that we were taught about, I think in third grade, they teach you the scientific method. That's, I think, when I was taught about.
I don't know its exact definition.
I don't know. I mean, you're suggesting that it has an exact definition. So that's already a problem. That already
depends. Like usually.
Let me just suggest that you saying I don't know its exact definition, you're suggesting again that science exists in some Platonic realm and we have to access it somehow through prophecy or something. And I would suggest
no.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that science is whatever I decide science will be, and no one can ever tell me what science is. Only people can suggest to me what science is, but at the end of the day, science is me. And no one, not Einstein and not von Neumann, I don't care. No one can tell me what science is. I know better than anyone what science is. Only I know what science is. I cannot refer to anyone for anything, for any truth. I cannot rely on anyone for truth except for what I understand. So science.
A form of sophism, then.
I'm open to hear everyone's opinion, but I'm not going to appeal to anyone's authority. If you ask me what the truth is, I will never appeal to authority unless I can completely back it up. I will always give credit to whoever taught me something, but unless I truly believe it, then I'm not going to repeat it. I am able, for example, to comprehend the theory of special relativity. I don't need Einstein to tell you that it's true. I can derive special relativity just as he did. And I'm in the
Which is then
process.
objective, by the way.
What do you mean objective?
Yeah, when you can derive at the same conclusions and you have objectively
If
proven
that's your
that it's true.
definition, if that's your definition of objective, then fine. That's not my definition of objective. Objective is outside of my mind. That it's true regardless of me.
But who defines the definition?
Me. I mean, no, we in this discussion. Definitions are practical, definitions are just words that we use to talk to each other. Definitions are just a social agreement in order
I would
to.
like to go past the definition towards the concept, like the basic idea you convey. Like, and then you can have a discussion, but not about.
But at the
all
end of the
these
day,
things.
but even math and logic are just languages. Languages are just words that we agree on, and even concepts and general relativity and quantum mechanics. And quantum mechanics,
Yeah,
these.
but they just.
Mhm. Go ahead.
But these describe, let's say, things. Ideally, the truth in whatever loose
Funny,
definition I may use it. And if, let's say, if the mathematical formula, let's say, that is active, let's say, in the
One
plane
second,
where you sit in,
Dominic.
if it's
Dominic,
wrong,
one second. Dominic, 1 second. Somebody's asking, why? Oh, it's his name. Why am I muted again? No one is muted. So, oh, that's your name. Okay. No one is muted, and everybody can ask questions. Everyone can interject. And why am I muting again is asking, you used your mind to derive objectivity, seems circular. I don't, you're asking me. I don't like the term objectivity. I usually don't use the word objectivity. I don't like it. I don't use it. There are certain words I refrain from, and objectivity is one of them. And anyone can talk. You can use your audio. It's fine to interject. I mean, it's so I want. By the way, I want a deep discussion, so anyone can say whatever they want. Yes, I'm listening, Dominic. I'm sorry.
So coming back to your initial thing, I'd say the most fundamental definition about the scientific enterprise is that it's about finding out about that which is true, with the hope that striving towards a transcendent truth will make
No.
life more worth living.
So I don't
I
like.
think it's the basic motivation.
No, you said before, truth is what makes me alive, and I guess false is what make me die. So you said
it's one thing you could. It's
so
one definition you could come
that's
up
fine.
with.
That I agreed with. I forgot to stop you when you said transcend. I don't like that word. There is nothing transcends.
Well, that means
there's no
it means you will
there's
never.
Let me just make sure everybody understands. There's no transcendent truth. There's only my subjective experience using my primitive emotions. There's nothing else.
So
that's good. You disagree.
Let
That's
me
good.
explain how I
I
see it. So if you in the scientific enterprise, you never arrive at absolute truth. You have your theory is 90% full of errors. And
let me just read a comment. Just 1 second. So I don't know. Shoshi is not in the room, but Shoshi said, you use your mind to think critically about evidence to reach conclusions. That's not circular. I think she was responding to somebody else. Yes, go ahead, Dominic. I'm listening. So let me just repeat. So there is no transcendental truth. There is only my subjective experience with my very primitive emotions. And science is
That's
just,
your opinion.
of course, everything is my opinion. This universe is my opinion. You is
Sure,
my
sure.
opinion.
But
Mhm.
my position is that scientific enterprises, you come up with theory and maybe it's 90% wrong and 10% is true, and then you get a rebuttal of sorts, maybe it's productive,
Yes,
and
but
maybe
that's
that's full of errors too, and then very
yes,
slowly
yes,
it's
but
like a voyage. You move
yes,
towards
yes,
a destination. You can never arrive at
yes.
absolute truth.
No,
And that's what I call
that's
transcendental.
no, that's
You only arrive at a certain level of truth by dialogue, but not at absolute
we don't.
reality
You
or
don't
truth,
know
however
that.
you want to
You
define
don't.
it.
You don't know that. You
But
don't.
you let's say science is a religious enterprise in that sense that you strive towards the absolute. You don't strive towards subjective truth. You have this. You want to
But you
know what's
don't.
absolutely out there.
But you don't know. You simply don't know if you have arrived. It's unknowable. This truth, this transcendental truth. The problem with it is that it's unknowable by definition. Once you're saying it transcends what? My emotions, my primitive feelings, my primitive experiments. It transcends that. For me, that's magical and it's unscientific. And it's for me, it's undefined. Once it's unscientific, it's undefined. I have no position about it. I don't strive for some objective truth. I strive to minimize the errors in my experiments. If I notice errors, if I notice my experiment apparatus has errors, it jiggles instead of being stationary, instead of being stable. I want it to be rigid. In the Michael Morley experiment, I think Michelson lost his mind because for years they were trying to stabilize the table. It had to be super perfectly stabilized. The guy lost his mind. He went to an asylum or something, a mental asylum. So you try to remove errors as much as you can, but that's practical. There's no objective truth. There is no objective truth of some law of gravity that I'm after. There is my experimentation, and I try to minimize the errors, and whatever the result is, that's the result. That's it. There's nothing else. I don't know if there is actually in some objective realm, if there is gravity. I don't know. It's unknowable. There's no point in thinking about it or talking about it. There's no objective truth I
I
strive for
think
because, yes.
that is a minority position. I have never heard
That's
your
appeal.
position.
That's appealed to popularity. So that's a logical fallacy.
Yeah,
I'm not interested in a
no, it's just my subjective, let's say,
but that's a
critique
lot.
of
But
the
everybody
position. Yeah,
agrees.
I've never.
But look, look. I'm not interested in hearing some popularity contest. I'm not right. That's not interesting, right? It's not. Some democratic elections were held
But you are
about.
giving your popularity, you're doing the
No,
same stuff.
no.
Let's
This is
say
my.
in this
This is
debate, you give your subjective
no. Yes,
definition.
yes. Everything I give you is my subjective definition. This is my subjective definition of science. And everybody who disagrees with me or agrees with me, I don't care if they even exist. I'm right now trying to convince you of this very deep revelation that I've had. And if you want
I think
to,
it's wrong. Like I'm on board with that you cannot know absolute truth, but I would say the shadow you would see in a cave is still
you
you
don't
can
know.
infer things
You
about
don't
absolute
know.
reality.
You don't know. No, sorry. It's not
And
that you
that's
don't know.
okay. You can
It's
dream too,
unknowable.
you see.
No, it's just unknowable. I don't see the point of talking about it. What's the point of
Well,
discussing
it's your
something?
discussion. I mean, it's my position
No,
is that.
no. It's unknowable by your definition. This is unknowable. So if it's unknowable, then what's the point of mentioning it? What's the point? What's the point? It's magic talk. It's undefined. It's unscientific. Why would we talk about it? That's not part of the scientific method. That has nothing to do with the scientific method. The scientific method is about noticing a phenomenon, coming up with a theory to explain a phenomenon. Let's talk about the scientific method. So the scientific method is about very few steps. It's about noticing a phenomenon, coming up with an explanation for the phenomenon, making predictions based on this explanation, based on this theory. The explanation is called a theory. We call it a theory. Coming up with predictions, and then setting up an experiment, devising an experiment, setting it up, and testing and comparing the results to the predictions. And if we get it right, then we validate the theory, we validate the explanation, and if we don't if the predictions don't come true, then we invalidate the theory, and we need to look for other theories. But for now, we don't have an explanation.
Well, moreover, in the scientific method, we work from the basis of a null hypothesis, and the point of any experiment is to demonstrate whether or not there is no relationship between the constructs you're trying to compare.
What do you mean? Explain. What do you mean by null hypothesis?
So with a null hypothesis, let's say that you're trying to test a medication. Let's say you're trying to see, does this medication decrease symptoms of runny noses? You would establish an experiment where you compare a group of people who doesn't take the medication to a group of people who does take the medication. And you would work with the assumption of a null hypothesis, which means that you would assume that introducing this medication will have no influence whatsoever on the people involved in the experiment. And then when you introduce the medicine, you either fail to reject the null hypothesis, or you reject the null hypothesis with an alternative hypothesis, such as this medication will decrease runny noses.
I don't see the practicality of this null hypothesis. What's the point of this idea of the null hypothesis?
It reduces the positive bias that might be involved in an experiment.
Let's talk
because we're not aiming to.
One second. Let's talk about gravity. How would you use the null hypothesis when testing for gravity, for example?
If you're trying to implement a null hypothesis, this is really something that mainly happens within experimental science, right?
Yeah. We don't.
Gravity is.
Let's talk about gravity. I want to simplify it. Let's set up an experiment. Yeah. So what would be the null hypothesis with gravity? Or are you saying it's impossible to have a null hypothesis with gravity? Are you there?
It's not impossible. Sorry, I was muted.
Yeah.
No, it's not impossible, but you would have to like state it in like the context of an experiment, right?
Yeah.
So
what would be
if we were trying to,
yeah,
if we were trying to establish an experiment, which, I mean, usually we would think of testing for like gravitational forces, right? We could say, well,
okay, yeah,
you have a planetary body here in space, and you have this other planetary body here in space.
I'm at my desk right now. I want to test for gravity, so I pick something up and I let it go, and it falls down. So my theory is that there is gravity, that, you know, objects with masses attract one another. So the Earth has a mass, this thing I picked up, the mouse I picked up has a mass, I let it go, it falls down. So that's my theory. What would be my null theory, my null hypothesis? Like,
your null hypothesis in this instance would be there is no relationship between the mass of two objects and the attraction between them.
That would be difficult since everything we know has a mass. But that's a good point. So they actually discovered that it's true that it has nothing to do with mass, because light is also curved by mass, which, light is just a wave, and they discovered that it's curved, just as if it had a mass. So the null hypothesis with respect to gravity, actually ended up being true. That is general relativity, actually. That's funny. But you say, okay, so you're saying the null hypothesis is the hypothesis that there is no relationship. There's not even correlation between the parameters, the parameters under discussion.
Right. And by assuming that there is no relationship, it makes it easy to see when there is a relationship.
So if I assume there is no relationship, it makes it easy to see that, well, and sometimes you realize that the null hypothesis is true. But that's not true, because in general relativity, at least one of the objects, you need mass or energy in order to create what we call gravity. That's very confusing. So how? Okay, but why is the null hypothesis? It sounds like a technical, So you're saying it's part of the scientific method? That's how you define the scientific method?
Yeah. It's so what we're doing is we're not proposing a theory, right? And then confirming that theory.
Okay.
What we're doing is we're proposing that there's no relationship between these things, and then we're rejecting that statement.
I see.
So
it
protects us from accepting potentially wrong conclusions.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, when I come up with a theory to explain a phenomenon, you come up with a null theory to reject the theory. So it's the inverse of the theory. It's the negation of the theory, and you test. But how would you test for that? Oh, so in general relativity, we would test with light. We would look at the bending of light, because assuming light has no mass, that's, I guess, and that was the test. Okay.
Right. If we assume that light has no mass, we could assume.
Yeah, but I don't see the null hypothesis. It's a nice step to have, but I don't see it as critical. How is it critical for the scientific method? How would you suggest that it's a built-in feature of the scientific method, without which I cannot have science? Are you saying I cannot have science without the null hypothesis technique?
You could engage in some testing, but in the context of like a laboratory experiment, it's been the case for about the past 100 years that the null hypothesis has been a standard introduction into the literature.
Interesting. Let me test this. This is actually very interesting. So I'm some of my time I spend as a software engineer. So we in software engineering, we have something that people came up with a while ago. It's called TDD, test-driven design. In test-driven design, we first write a test. That's how we begin. We first write a test, and we expect it to fail. And we confirm that it fails. So let's say a client asks me to add a feature to my system. So first I would write a test to confirm that the feature has been added. And then I would run this test and confirm that the test fails, as to make sure that this feature does not exist, has not been implemented. Sometimes this first test comes out, it succeeds, which means that the feature has been implemented and the request from the client is invalid. Anyway, would you say this is related? Is this related?
I think that it's like similar in theory. It's not exactly the same,
Yeah,
right?
I have
Because
to think about it
the
more.
null
I don't know.
hypothesis, I
Mhm.
mean, it's really just the statement that there's no relationship between these two variables, right?
So, okay, well,
Um,
let's go back to an experiment. So, with gravity, it's a little bit difficult. So, let's go back to the medicine. So, let's say we have a new medicine that we believe this would be good. Well, yeah. So, let's say we have a medicine and we want to test it. So, we give it to two groups, the control and the actual, and we compare and we see that yeah, the people that got the medicine got better and the control did not. So, why do we need the null hypothesis in this case?
well, in this case, we're rejecting the assertion that the medicine does not improve the condition, right? We're not asserting that it will, right?
Wait,
Because in
wait,
any
wait. I'm
medical
confused.
instance, you're going to,
Wait. I'm confused. So the null hypothesis would be that the medication does not help, does not improve the symptoms. Let's say we're testing for symptoms. So the
yes,
claim, so the null hypothesis would be that the medication does not help.
yes.
I would call it a negative hypothesis. But anyway, the null. So how would you test? So you're telling me that so you can only test with control and with actual. So
Yeah,
how would
and you
you?
compare the two.
But you're already doing that with respect to expecting the actual hypothesis to be true. So how would why would the negative of the actual be different than the actual in terms of mathematical validity? I don't see the advantage of
uh,
you're just assuming the opposite. How does that help?
Well, we're not working with a Boolean variable here, right?
Oh,
We're
okay.
not saying the medication will improve the condition. We're establishing that the medication can improve the condition, right? Um, and that's basically how all medical research works, right?
Wait, but what do you?
We establish that there's some likelihood that
Okay.
it will improve the condition, but we're not establishing that it's like a Boolean fact that it is true that this medication will improve this condition.
So you're saying that maybe it helps because of a third variable? So you want to nullify the third? Like you're saying maybe it's correlated instead of caused? So you're saying I gave,
Right.
but that's what the control does. The control is to remove that variable. I mean, you're removing the medication, and of course you expect no
Oh
one to
no,
get.
there are innumerable variables that could be involved in any kind of medication testing, right? The exact chemical composition of a person's body is not going to be the same from person to person at all times.
Right.
So it so
But that's
there are
random.
tons of confounding variables
But
that
that's
could mess with it.
but that's random. You randomize and you double blind everyone or triple blind or you blind everyone involved in the experiment and you randomize everything, the control, everything is completely randomized. That's how you remove the bias. I don't see the point of the null hypothesis. It's just if you're assuming that the null, meaning the negation of the hypothesis, that's just a mathematical inversion. So what's the difference between testing the null as opposed to testing the actual hypothesis? I don't see the difference.
The difference is that you can't, in the sciences, you're not looking to establish truth at any point. You're looking to establish what is probably the case given the evidence,
Okay.
right? And so you're not trying to establish when you do a test for a medication that it is the case that this medication helps. You're providing evidence to support the claim
Okay.
that the medication has an effect,
Okay.
right? You're never going to get 100%.
Okay. Yeah.
So you can't establish, like, from an experiment with 100% certainty that some X will follow some Y, right?
One sec. Yeah,
That's-
but again, that's just the definition of the scientific method. I mean, I agree that that is science, and science is, you know, you just conduct experiments, and we live in an unknown universe, and it's a multivariable universe. That's for sure. Yeah. So and it's impossible to control for all the variables. But again, that's why we randomize. So you randomize as much as you can. You blindfold everyone involved. What else can you do? One time, let me ask you. So I have a hypothesis that this medication helps. So I run the experiment. I have a control, and I have a group, and the actual group, the medicated group, and I have results. So if you come up with a null hypothesis, would you come up with another test? Is it a separate test, or is it the same test?
No, it's the same test. You're performing the same action. You're just saying that you're not establishing that it is absolutely true that the medication causes this outcome. You're
But
establishing that we have reason to believe that it is the case.
so how is the null? So you're saying the null hypothesis has there's no implementation of this null hypothesis. We never test the null hypothesis. That's what you're saying, right? We never test it. We always test the hypothesis. We don't test the null hypothesis, according to you, right?
No, what we're doing, we're always testing a null hypothesis whenever we're in the sciences. The alternative hypothesis that's put forward is a likely explanation if it is the case that the null hypothesis is rejected.
I don't know what you're saying. There's like double, triple negatives in that statement, and I don't understand if the null. I mean, I thought the null hypothesis is some hypothesis that we test for separately, and we have some conclusion from it, and from that conclusion we have more knowledge. But
So when we're doing any kind of comparative group testing, we're performing a statistical action, right?
yes,
We're doing like a t-test or a comparison like that. And we need a foundation of equality to work from in order
yes,
to determine that there's any statistical effect.
yes.
So by assuming that there is no effect whatsoever, we work from a foundation of nothing every single time. And that
Okay.
provides us a consistent basis for all of our medical testing, right?
I don't see. I agree, but I don't see what you're not saying anything I can implement in an experiment. I mean, if I run an experiment, if you give me medication, I would just run it on two groups. One would be the control, one would be the medicated. I would look at the results and see if it's statistically significant, and that would be the end of that. And the more I get statistical significance, the better. If the control there's no improvement, and the medicated is everyone is improved, you know, and the groups are large, the populations are large, and it's very randomized, very blinded. Everyone is blindfolded. So where is the now? Okay, let's say I ran my experiments, and everyone in the medicated got better, and everyone in the control did not get better, and everything was randomized, very large populations, and everything was double blind. I mean, completely blindfolded. Everyone is blindfolded. Then you come around, you say, wait, let's test for the null hypothesis. What would you do in such a case to test the null hypothesis?
Well, there isn't, you're not testing differently. It's just a different hypothesis for the same experiment. So whenever you have any experiment, you have a null hypothesis, which is that there is no relationship between variables. And then you have an alternative hypothesis that there is a relationship between the variables. And your one experiment is going to produce some kind of statistical output that says, oh, this is a p-value of equal to or lesser than 0.05, which means functionally that there is a 5% or less likelihood that the results of your test are random statistical error. So you can't establish that your hypothesis is true,
But that's
because there's always that chance of the random
yes,
statistical error.
right. But that, so you're saying, what do you? Okay, but I don't see the null hypothesis as some practical idea that I can implement. I just don't. I don't. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe you're not telling me something. Where is it useful? It doesn't sound like it's useful. It's useful as an idea that maybe there is no relationship, and what we see as a relationship, no, there is no relation. I mean, it happens to me all the time that I talk to people and they believe in a relationship, and I need to explain to them, no, there is no relationship. It happens all the time in debates. People think they have a relationship, and I have to show them, no, there is actually no relationship. But
In the science, we just generally assume that unless there is evidence that there is a relationship between X and Y, there's no relationship between X and Y.
but I just don't see it as I don't see it as part of the scientific method. I mean, maybe it is.
Yes,
Mhm.
it's increased in popularity across all forms of experimental testing over the past 100 years because,
Mhm.
and I can't give you like a complete theoretical explanation for why,
Mhm.
but because when we have experiments that use the basis of the null hypothesis,
Mhm.
we have less false positives.
What's a false positive? So a false positive is when you give the medication, the person well, false positive, there's a problem with the test. The test is problematic. So the test gave us a positive, meaning, let's say the guy got better, but actually he did not get better. There was a mistake in the actual testing. The test result. So how would you remove the false positives because of the null hypothesis? How would that help? How? I don't see how you can do
Because
that.
you're working from a basis of assuming that there is no relationship.
How? Okay, I'm assuming there is no relationship, yeah, but there is no practical. It's not. You're not giving me instructions based on this assumption to run some special test that will remove the false positives. How do I remove false positives? I don't. Tell me the trick to remove false positives. How do I do that? I mean, I'm always going to have false positives. I'm always going to have problems with the reports. A person seems to have gotten better. Really, he didn't get better, right? That's what a false positive would be, I'm assuming, right?
So you have a p-value in a standard test in most comparative experiments, right?
So
The
p-value,
p-value,
what's, just in one word, what's the p-value?
okay, it's calculated to determine whether or not the null hypothesis is true.
Oh my God. You want
Right?
to kill me.
They set a significance level, and they say if it is beyond the significance level, then we reject the null hypothesis.
Would you say the null hypothesis is just random fluctuations? Basically, you're trying.
No, it's just the assumption that there's no relationship between two variables.
So the p-value has to do with some fluctuations, with some random fluctuations, doesn't it?
Right. The p-value is what you use to determine whether or not you reject the null hypothesis.
Would you say with a
The
very
number
large...
that the p-value is set
Wait,
at
wait, one
is
second.
usually 0.05.
Okay, but
And
so
that
that's like
number
so that's
is
like 5% error that you're assuming under 5% error, under 5% difference is error, basically, right? That's the assumption.
right. When you're saying that you have a p-value of 0.05, you're saying that you have a 5% chance of having a false positive.
Oh my God. You're killing me here. And you're saying this is essential to the scientific method, in your view?
In pretty much all like experimental medical science, it is, yes.
But I hear the p-value in every field, not just in the medical field.
Well, that's because other fields also run similar statistical tests.
So it's in every field today that they use p-value.
Well, yeah, if they use the same statistical tests, then they're working from a basis of a null hypothesis.
Let me see what it says in my, let's see, Wikipedia. Let me copy the link. Maybe they can explain it in a way that I can understand it. In null hypothesis significance testing, the p-value is the probability of obtaining test results at least as extreme as the result actually observed under the assumption that the null hypothesis is correct. I see. So the p-value, that's the 5%. That's basically what a null hypothesis would give us. So if all I get is the p-value, then I got nothing. All I have is the null hypothesis. So that's useless. That's what you're saying, right?
Essentially, yeah.
So finally, I'm beginning to understand this word. Okay, a very small p-value
Right.
means
We need to go.
Mhm.
Yeah, we need to go beyond just seeing some effect. We need an actual, like, statistically significant effect.
Yes, but who determines 0.05? That's just what people decided. That's just what's accepted, right?
To my knowledge, it was based off of the acceptable range of negative outcomes in the medical field.
Fine, but it's whatever. It's like I don't want to say random, but it's what's the word? And people just decide. They just say so. There's a word for it. There's no reason. They just decided. There's a word for that. But okay, let me just read the last sentence. A very small p-value means that such an extreme observed outcome would be whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay, fine. So the p-value is what we. So how would you calculate? Can you calculate a p-value? Probably not, right?
Yeah.
Or you can? How? Based on what? How would you do that?
Well, it's just a matter of practicality, right? That it's literally like, hey, if there's a 5% risk of something bad happening in a hospital setting,
No,
then that is acceptable,
but
right?
can like so okay, so the p-value cannot be calculated. We have to run tests and see and actually test for the p-value before we can. So first what you're saying is first we run tests and basically on the control group. So first we run tests, we see in general what is the random fluctuation? What does randomness give us? What kind of a result? So basically so you could say that when we compare, I see. So I would say that if we first run a test just on control, just on the controlled group with no medication, and we see, okay, statistically, who gets better? Statistically, just by randomness, who gets better? that gives us the p-value, right?
Yes, you could do something like that, and that's generally why it's a p-value of 0.05. But there are instances where people will choose to set their p-value at like p-value of 0.0001, just because they want to be more sure.
That's fine. So let's say we run a test. We see 5% of the people get better by themselves. Just that's nature. No, I would raise the p-value. I would say that 10% get better by themselves if I want to make sure that my actual test, my actual medication is. I would raise the p-value, not lower the p. A higher p-value gives you a higher assurance that your medication is effective. Because the p-value.
So if you have a p-value of 0.05, then you have a 5% chance of a false positive.
Right.
If you have a p-value of 0.01, then you have a 1% chance of a false positive.
But yeah,
they just set the p-value at 0.05.
Yeah, I understand.
Because it's a matter of practicality.
I understand, but I'm just saying that if you raise your p-value, you're getting better correlation. If you're saying
well, you will see.
It doesn't matter. It's fine. It doesn't matter. I mean, I don't want to take your time. I mean,
the way that it's calculated, like the value, you want it to be lower. Essentially,
it's fine.
That's the way that it's calculated.
It's fine, but I would say that this is not. I don't know if I would say that this is part of the scientific method. I would say that it's I don't know if I would say that it's such an essential part of the scientific method. This is like it's already like if you become an experimentalist and you I don't know. I mean, this is like for most.
I'm just saying that if you like if you do an experiment and you write it up and you send it into a scientific peer-reviewed journal, they won't publish it if you don't have a null hypothesis.
I see.
So,
I see. Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so as a matter of practicality, it's part of the scientific method.
Yeah. That's less important, but I'm beginning, regardless of that, I'm beginning to feel the power of the null hypothesis and the p-value. Interesting. I'm getting a feeling for it, which is really, really nice. Okay. All right. Okay, man. Let me make you a friend because you are very valuable to know. You work as a researcher?
I mean, I work as a clinician. I went to graduate school for psychology, and we did some experiments, so we had to learn about all that shit.
Amazing. Do you teach it? Did you get to teach it?
No. I decided to just go the clinical route. I didn't want to be in school anymore.
Oh, I see. Oh, so you're like a psychotherapist?
Yeah.
Wow. Impressive. Very nice. Okay, man. I'm gonna let you go. Thank you very much for your time. You really helped me. This is really great. I really appreciate everything.
Cool. Yeah, man. Keep checking out the null hypothesis. It's good shit. I'll catch you later.
Yeah, I'll catch you later. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye. All right. That was a very educational video. So if anyone who listens to it, this is really useful. So at least now I know when everybody says p-value and null hypothesis, at least now I know the power. So let's just recap. So the null hypothesis is just the assumption that actually there's no correlation between, let's say, a medication and the result. So let's assume there is no correlation. I don't know if it's about that assumption. I would just say that we test the people for getting better, right? We assume that people get better without the medication. That's the assumption. People get better without the medication. That's the assumption. So you're suggesting, so it's like with gravity, we assume that things with mass fall towards Earth. That's the assumption. Well, let's test if things fall towards Earth regardless of their mass. So if we test light, we would see that light, which is just a wave, we know that it is electromagnetic wave, and we see that it bends towards Earth, just like as if it had mass. And then we know, oh, so it has nothing to do with having mass. Even something without mass is attracted to something with a mass. And then we would ask, wait a minute, but let's say something that doesn't have mass, like a laser beam. Does one laser beam get attracted to another laser beam? So these are now two waves. They should not be attracted towards each other because there is no mass in this equation. And then we would see yes, and that would be a complete test of a null hypothesis. And we wouldn't even need to run the test with the mass because we would know that we would get general relativity just from tests. Anyway, but regardless, let's go back to the medication. So using the medication testing, so we would test who gets better without a test, or how many people get better, what percent population gets better without the medication. That would be our p-value. And sometimes we might discover that 100% get better without the medication. But that is actually very difficult to discover because many times people get medication when they have symptoms. We don't just forgo medication. So like everybody, I don't want to say, but everybody gets the schmaxine. All the babies get the schmaxines. We actually don't know if the schmaxines do anything. The fact that everyone is healthy, we might suggest, oh, that's because of the schmaxines. It might not. It might be regardless. We need to test the null hypothesis. We need to have a separate population that doesn't have schmaxines and see if they are as healthy. And that would be our p-value. And we might discover that the schmaxines are nothing. I'm not taking, of course, I'm not taking a position because I don't want this, I don't want YouTube to, to send me a cease and desist. So let's ignore this topic. It's a very dangerous topic. Medication happens to be a very dangerous topic, unfortunately. But this is a very powerful. So when I debate people, many times they come up with theories and they show me evidence. But then I tell them, look, your evidence has nothing to do with your theory because let's remove all the variables and still we will notice that the evidence is there even without whatever should have caused it, according to you. So this is I happen to use it all the time in a debate. It's very powerful. Anyway, hopefully everyone understands. Let me see. Nope Popcorn says, is this a Breaking Bad channel? Is it a Breaking Bad channel? No, this has nothing to do with Breaking Bad. Why would it have anything to do with Breaking Bad? No, I don't do Breaking Bad. I never liked it. I never liked the acting. I don't like the main actor. I don't like anything about it. I saw some of it. It was interesting a little bit, but I didn't find it interesting enough to care for it in the long run. So nothing to do with Breaking Bad. But I like your name, Nope. Nope Popcorn is a funny name. All right, everyone. That's it. See you next time. Bye-bye.